The issue of sustainability of this entire sport is where we're going with this, and there are challenges aplenty. I'm actually going to come and join you, I think. It's a bit more cozy if I'm down here rather than hanging on up there. Let me start with you, Anis. I think we need to know a bit more about Amplify, first of all. There are many who do, but there will be some who don't. Perhaps you could give us, in a nutshell, what you do, and I think you may have you got a video for us as well? Can we check Anis's mic? Try that again.
Testing.
Yeah, we're there.
Okay,
Good.
There we go. Thank you guys so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be able to talk about education on this very important panel, and for education to really be seen and discussed in the space of the future of racing. So when it comes to Amplify, in 2019, my co-founder and I identified that there was a huge gap in youth education in the US thoroughbred industry. And so there were youth educational programs, but they were regionally based. They were generally targeted to a specific age group, and there was no connecting through line that, if a young person Googled, how do you get into horse racing, connected them to the opportunities that were closest to them. So we really set out to create this organization that could promote existing opportunities in racing for young people to get involved, create new opportunities that fill in the gaps, and really amplifies horse racing. So we do have a video to show where we're at in our programming now.
Amplify serves as the youth arm of the thoroughbred industry. If a young person hears about horse racing, and they want to know more about our industry, and they Google, how do I get involved in horse racing, we want Amplify to be the first thing that they come up with, and we want to provide this concrete, streamlined pathway for them to enter the sport.
Keeneland has been a big supporter of Amplify since we started working with them years ago, and the work that they've done in that time is really just amazing. They have a big presence with us on College Scholarship Day. They help with our 5th grade field trips. They participate at BriarFest.
Amplify's signature program, from when we first started as an organization to now really seeing results, is the Amplify Horse Racing Mentorship Program.
My mentor was Rhonda Rathgaber, and Rhonda was great. She did so much for me, and she got me connected with people. I actually got a part-time job at Haggard. I learned so much more than I could ever imagine through this program, and it was because of Amplify that I was getting further into the thoroughbred industry and learning more.
One of those sayings that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Amplify is trying to plant seeds for the sport.
It's incumbent on all of us in the industry to find ways to expand our fan base, and that I truly believe is just a matter of exposing more people to the horse.
We're building the next generation, and I think that's something that's so wonderful about Amplify. They're taking chances on people who may not have had this chance or may not already be in the thoroughbred industry, and they're making them the next generation.
We all want to see the next generation love this sport and love horses as much as we do. We want to see the sport and the industry continue to develop and have a future. And for anyone watching this, you can be part of helping us and creating the next generation of horse racing.
So to really sum that up, we started as a grassroots initiative in 2019. We became an official nonprofit in 2020, but we didn't really become fully operational until 2023. So we're still a very young organization, very early on in our journey, but have seen a lot of success so far.
Big message about the next generation. Lots of young faces there, which is really important. But I just want to ask you, before I go to Stuart, I just want to ask you one thing, Anis, which is, where do your undergraduates, where do those Amplify undergraduates come from? How are they coming to you? And what sort of, is it a very varied background? Are they already linked to people who love the horse, or they've never seen a horse before?
Yeah, it's all across the board. To this point, we've had over 100 what we call mentee graduates. from over 30 different states across the US. So they're coming from all different states. Their backgrounds range from they turned on the TV and they saw a horse race and they thought, that's really cool, how do I get into it? To young people who are already connected to horses and they wanted to specifically learn more about the thoroughbred industry. So it really ranges.
Okay, thank you very much. Stu, welcome. I know you're a big sports fan, not particularly within the racing world, which I think is an advantage, given we're trying to sort of educate as well as understand. So the sustainability of racing, what can help to achieve the sort of things Anis is working on? I mean, what do you make of it?
Thank you for having me, first of all. It's working.
I think so.
Yeah, sorry. I think it's really interesting that having seen all of the great work this week and really highlighted some great initiatives that are happening, actually I think watching Anis's video feels like the first time I've really seen truly the next generation in the whole week. We spent the whole week talking about young audiences and what we're going to do and how we're going to attract everybody. That's the first time in the final session, and well done everybody, by the way, for making the final session of the day and still being with us. I'm kind of aware that we're all that stands between lunch and the end. But that's the first time we've actually seen images of children with horses. And I've worked across the media for 25 years, most of that in the BBC, and at Lucky Socks, we work right across loads of different sports, from golf to rugby union. And what aligns all of them is that when they want to start thinking about the next generation, they do two things. One is that they have senior executives who really take it seriously, and next they do something about it. And I think what I've seen this week, and apologies for being deliberately controversial, right? I think all of the stuff that's happening around younger audiences, where people have talked about younger audiences being 25-year-olds. Well, when I was 25, I was married with 2 kids. I was not a younger audience at 25. And I think if you really want to take that seriously, you kind of have to put your money where your mouth is. And Jane was talking about it on the panel just now. It's like you have to have a 10-year plan. A lot of what's happening now might be great initiatives, but they are only sticking plasters on a longer-term problem. You know, it's great to get 25-year-olds down to the races and they have a great time and they go away again. But that's a sticking plaster on a long-term problem.
So what is the appeal to, let's say, a 10-year-old in terms of racing? I mean, there are some who I've spoken to in the course of the week who think targeting the young audience, the 18 to 24-year-olds, is even wrong, because a lot of people will get into racing a bit like they might get into the more serious BBC talking channel later in life. So how do you get an 10-year-old involved?
And it's a real perceived wisdom, right? Is we used to have the same thing when I worked in BBC News and BBC Sport. We would go, don't worry about the youngsters, they'll come back to us when they grow up and they get old. And increasingly in this attention economy, that does not happen. And the same is true of racing. And I think actually looking around this room, I'm in a room of fantastic racing experts. Right, but how many people in this room, by a show of hands, and I'll have to shield from the light, how many in this room, by a show of hands, are parents? You know, or, so quite a lot. How many of you were children once? Right, most of you were the child once, some of you still are, Diana. But all that's happened is that you've forgotten what it was like to be a child. And actually now you know so much about racing that you've forgotten right at the start of why you fell in love with it in the first place. And at Lucky Socks, and I'm a passionate believer in this, we think that children make their first decisions about passions between the ages of like 6 and 8. And that might be football, it might be Taylor Swift, or it might be horses. Now, what it isn't is generally horse racing. And why I say that everybody in this room knows too much about horse racing is because it's like you're trying to make people fall in love with horse racing. And that's not how a relationship starts. Okay, a relationship starts right at the beginning with the magic of a horse. And I've done a similar panel to this at the Horses in Society conference in Britain, where, British equestrian, British show jumping, the horse industry has got the same problem. But it all stems from the fact that you're trying too hard to get everybody to fall in love with the top end of the sport. Well, actually, it starts with the very beginning of a relationship with a horse. So this morning, and forgive me because it's been a long day, right? So a lot of us have been up since 5 o'clock. I went to the track morning and it was brilliant and filmed one of the beautiful horses. I don't know, let's pretend it was Forever Young because, you know, that's the best one. Galloping towards me, and I filmed it. When I was on FaceTime with my 9-year-old stepdaughter this morning, I said, look, you know, Dad's been to see a horse, and she was like, I want to see the horses. Now, my stepdaughter has got no affiliation with horses at all. We are a main eventer sports family. We might be football fans. But she loves the look and feel of a horse. She loves the idea of seeing horses, and that is where the relationship starts. And I think what racing needs to do is go, what is our plan from that age? How do you effectively have a roadmap of how that develops, right? You know, it's some of the brilliant work that Anise is doing in schools. How does that develop as you get older so that the end game, frankly, your funnel is like this with people who love racing rather than this?
Let me ask you, Anise, then, what is your experience in terms of getting interest again? Do you think it's fallen off a cliff over the last 10, 20 years in terms of youngsters being interested? Because certainly as I was growing up, I know my sisters loved horses. I wasn't quite so bothered. I wanted to kick a football against a wall most of the day. But how do you get them in? And is there a readiness for that, or is there an ignorance about it?
Yeah. You know, I can't speak to the statistics of whether there's a decline in youth, you know, wanting to get involved, because I don't really know those statistics from 10 years ago. I only know what Amplify has done and seen in the last few years. And so we've really taken a multifaceted approach in how we engage with youth. We have a very holistic view in that we want to make sure that we're reaching youth where they are. We can't force them to come to us, so we need to come to them and make sure that we're delivering programming that serves them. So on the video, I talked a little bit about our mentorship program that is geared towards young people ages 15 to 25, so roughly high school through post-university, who are really interested specifically in careers with horses.
Okay.
And so that was a very strategically developed mentorship program. I do want to define mentorship because sometimes people mix that up with an internship. A mentorship is essentially a conversational and observation-based learning experience that's really built around relationship building, versus an internship is more of a hands-on work-based learning experience that's generally paid. And so in developing Amplify's mentorship program, we saw that historically there's huge value in mentors ushering young people into the industry. I know that I had mentors, and that's how doors were open for me. Many of my friends who came from varying pathways into the industry had mentors who opened that door for them. So it was really important for us that we create a strategic, formal mentorship program that is safe, that is structured, and provides this great onboarding experience for a young person who wants to learn the complexities and the nuances of our sport. So we've got our mentorship program.
Yep.
We have field-based outreach, so that's our boots on the ground, visiting classrooms, being at tracks, creating enrichment programs, so our, you know, face-to-face contact programs. And then we also focus on virtual engagement, so that's our social media and the like.
So I wasn't trying to rush you up, but I'm really keen to, it seems like we're looking at two distinct communities here in a way. We're looking at getting people to go to racing. Stuart was addressing that to a certain extent. You're looking at getting people into the world of racing, or the world of the horse. Mm-hmm. So perhaps partly to answer Yukio-san's concern about the numbers who are prepared to work in the industry. Is that the aim?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, Stu already reflected on how amazing horses are. Like, we're all captivated by horses. It's impossible to not be captivated by the horse. And, you know, Kate touched on this earlier, in that there's a big disconnect in today's society between people and agriculture. When you look at a big city and you think about places that people can go to see animals, you have a zoo, a dog park, or a racetrack. Like, we have so many racetracks across the world in big cities, and we can leverage that as an opportunity to connect young people with horses.
That is one of the realities of the challenge, Stuart, isn't it? We are just more distanced from all are sort of domesticated animals, if you like, whether it's on a farmyard or indeed horses at stables. Tell me a bit. You've sort of pointed out the problem and the challenge. What do you do with on a race day then that is more appealing to younger people? Because again, as you said, breaking into this world is quite tough in any case. Understanding and appreciating and not feeling intimidated by a race day has its own challenges. How on earth what do you do? What do you do with, can you change formats? Can you change the race offer? Or do you just look at other elements of the day?
I think you have to look at the whole thing root and branch, right? You know, and where other sports have been really successful in this is they've kind of looked at it from the point of view of the child, or if we think of children as customers. Now, if you go to most racetracks, they're generally built for people like us who can go and have a bet, have a drink in some countries, and it's not an experience that's built for a child. So, whether or not it's the student days, which have been really popular back in Britain, where they're sort of filling the racetracks, just with this sort of 18 to 21-year-olds, but it's thinking about, what is it like to be a child? What does a child want? And, there's nothing really that beats the experience of being up close and personal with a horse. If I was to say to most people in this room, how many horses do you have down at the racetrack, and can you have more horses there? Your immediate reaction would be, oh, no, we can't because the horses are racing. That's not the point. It's just a horse. It doesn't have to be one of the top horses, because if you are this high, it's just about seeing a horse. And I've been working in sport for 25 years, and I can't tell the difference between a thoroughbred stallion and the horse in my local field. And I put my hands up to that. If you are 8 years old, you certainly can't, but neither do you care. And I think that's the point. So
the point is, up close you can.
Yeah.
You can see the difference. So maybe that's part of the
But
point
it's
you're
about
making.
seeing it from a child's point of view, right? So how do you make the experiences? Is there a way of changing some of the formats? And I think it was Jane again who mentioned what they did in India with the IPL. They changed the format of a sport to introduce a new audience. And one of the things that always happens, if you think about what happened in Test match cricket, where one of the speakers talked about it earlier in the week, they introduced a whole new form of the sport. Now, the traditionalists went, this is a terrible form of the sport and we don't like it. But actually what people said was, that's okay, but this is not for you. Now, if you change the format of horse racing because you want a format that's different for a younger audience, or the experience that's different, or you have a digital online club or whatever it might be, that's okay, because it's not for the people in this room.
But so do you think things like, I don't know, novelty races, Shetland ponies coming on for a 2 furlong race or something in the midst of the next race on the card, that should be encouraged across the piece?
I think what you need to do is look at it properly and say, what are the experiments that you can run, right? And I always think the thing with trying new things is that some will fail and some will catch on. Now, everybody who already really, really loves horse racing is not going to stop loving horse racing because you're trying something over here. But what they might do is go, we can kind of see what you're doing because that next generation is really important. And I think you think about some of the things that I'm talking about around 6 to 12-year-olds or teenagers, the more you grow participation and awareness of horse racing, the more you do great work like Anise is doing with Amplify and going into schools and building resources for children just to feel like they're part of it, then actually all of the other problems solve themselves. And the panel before where they're talking about the great success they're having in Japan, where they don't have the breeders issue because actually, I know I've only learned this week, right? I didn't know this before. That in Japan, it's a sense that the jockeys are really famous and people love horses and the storytelling is amazing around it. And I've got a background in the media, and for me, everything is about storytelling. Apart from storytelling, that's about people. In racing and in horseland, right, everything's still about people, but it's also about horses. And I think a lot of the new initiatives that are great around social events and everything else are kind of forgetting that it's about people and it's about horses. Because if you go to an event and, this might be slightly controversial, you might have a great day out, but if you don't see the horse and you don't connect with it, you may as well be at a restaurant in downtown Riyadh or wherever you are in the world.
Good point. You use the word curriculum associated with the work you do. Is that actually about getting a curriculum into schools so that it becomes part of the education system?
Yes, exactly.
Right, okay.
And I'll say that was, when it comes to collaboration, which has been mentioned over the last few days, like how do we collaborate better as an industry and share ideas, share tools? We looked at an initiative in England called Racing to School, where they've created a school-based curriculum workbook that ties into a field trip where children in schools near a racetrack get to then go on a field trip to the track and have this companion material book. And so we thought, how do we do that in the US? How do we create materials that educators want, that apply to the standards that they need to meet, and give us a way of bringing young people to the track? So we are very excited to soon launch a high school curriculum that educates about the economic impact of the thoroughbred industry, equine science, and careers. And so those are lesson plan materials that we can give to educators that they can teach in class regardless of their prior equine knowledge. And it's going to complement a field trip and bringing those students to a racetrack, and then start to create a pipeline for students who are interested in getting more involved to then apply to our mentorship program. And that's, I'll add, a scalable model. So we're based in Lexington, Kentucky, but that's then a model that we can adapt and share with other regional partners around the US.
Right, so it's an amazing opportunity if you get that instilled into schools in particular. Stuart, I want to close really with a question to an outsider, if I can call you that, although you're in the tent now, and perhaps it will reflect on what you've seen over the last 2 or 3 days. But you've mentioned IPL, we've often heard about the Premier League, there are umpteen examples, NFL, of this roaring success in terms of the use of social media, of growing the brand, etc. I think there'll be a lot of people here who might feel that they're coming from the back of the pack a bit. And the world is moving faster and faster. We've had an AI presentation which only adds to that sense of anxiety. Is this a sport that can catch up, or should there be a realistic expectation as to how far it can go now?
I think it can absolutely catch up. And one of my reflections this week is that actually quite a lot of the conference has felt a bit doom and gloom about, oh my word, what we're going to do about all these terrible challenges. I would flip that on its head and say, if you were any other sport in the world and you had this level of engagement and this level of fans and the level of people that are passionate about it, and frankly, the amount of people who go to horse racing, there are other sports in the world that would kill as that as a starting point. So I think you've kind of got a choice as an industry. You can continue to go, woe is me, and wring in your hands and talk, go, what we're going to do about it. Or you can actually make a plan and go, why not have this as a turning point? So, the stuff that Philip was talking about, whether or not it's breeding, whether or not it's about attendances that are dropping, whatever it might be. This is a great starting point. If you started horse racing right now and you had all of those numbers, that'd be pretty good, I think. And so I think it's about flipping the mindset. But again, it's coming back to, if you do think there are issues, do something about it. Don't talk about it a lot, and then everybody goes home and does what they've always done. Actually have a real plan and do something about it.
I feel like I should just put in a little rider on that we have also had some amazing presentations about what is being achieved perhaps in individual jurisdictions or particular races, which I hope will provide a lot of inspiration here. You two have helped enormously in that regard, so thank you both very much indeed. Ladies and gents, Anise and Stu, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much, thanks.